Hi everybody. Today I'm very excited to have Judy Moe with us, Richfield resident and co-founder of the Richfield Disability Advocacy Partnership. This month we're celebrating 30 years since the American with Disabilities Act was passed, and Judy's here to speak a little bit more about the ADA, the impact that it's had in our community, and a little bit more about the work here in Richfield and what we can do to continue supporting our community members with disabilities. So thank you for visiting us, Judy. And I wanted to ask you, could you talk a little bit more about the ADA and the impact that passing that legislation 30 years ago has had on our community members with disabilities?
Absolutely, and thank you for having me and allowing us to talk about this very important subject to our community. The ADA, like the mayor said, was passed exactly 30 years ago, but that's not really where things began. As we know, it takes a really long time to pass legislation. They really started working on the legislation in 1986. In the 80s, the disability rights movement did things like blocking buses in streets because they were not accessible, doing sit-ins. So because of the passing of the ADA, George H. Bush signed it into law on July 26, 1990. And because of that law, people with disabilities can walk on sidewalks that they've never walked on before, can enter buildings that they've never entered before, work where they've never worked before, live where they've never lived before, and had a lot more opportunities. And the main focus of the disability rights movement was independent living. And that the primary focus of that was being able to live out in the community instead of being institutionalized, as well as being able to work and function in society like everyone else and be included in everything, just like we all do every day. Now, unfortunately, just like the civil rights laws did not get rid of racism, the ADA passing has not gotten rid of ableism. And through this time in the last 30 years, there have been legislators who have tried to strip down the laws, water them down, that sort of thing. So the fight has really continued for the entire 30 years and still continues today. So we have a long way to go. We still can't get on all the sidewalks. Hennepin County, for example, only about 50%, maybe 60% at the most, of their intersections are accessible. And they do more every year. They put money into it every single year. But after 30 years, we've only gotten that far. And so, that's just an example. That exact same thing applies to employment and housing. Accessible housing is an extremely important issue that nobody talks about, and the disability community is desperate for accessible housing. And seniors, the amount of seniors we have as the boomers age is, we're going to have more seniors than we have any other age group in just a few years. And almost 50% of those over 75 have some type of disability, and I believe it's around 40% of people over 65 have some type of disability. And so where are we going to house all of these people when currently we don't have enough housing for people, and people are homeless, people are stuck in institutions or being forced back into institutions and group homes when they don't really need to be there. So housing is a huge issue. Obviously, healthcare is a huge issue, and what people don't know is healthcare here in Minnesota, medical assistance actually funds housing and income and assistants, personal care attendants, nurses, to come into people's homes so that they can continue to live in the community. So making sure we have comprehensive health care is extremely important. And just better access to everything. And I think when people talk about access and accessibility, they immediately think about things being wheelchair accessible and curb cutouts. I think curb cutouts are the most obvious thing to able-bodied people because we see them all the time and they're present in our lives. But accessibility really means just being able to get in the front door of buildings, being able to go to your friend's house to visit, all the basic things we do, going to the park. I mean, pretty much every little thing that you do every day is affected, the things you take for granted. And so we're encouraging the city, the county, the state to continue to work on these things and pass new policies and legislation so that we can continue on this path and not stay stuck. Minnesota has stayed stuck in some ways more than other states in the areas of housing. We have more group homes than most other states, and people who want to live in the community aren't as able to do that. And there are just many things that we need to be working on, and I think some people think that the ADA passing was the end, like we've done this now, but we still have a really long way to go, and all of us as citizens, not just people with disabilities, need to encourage our lawmakers to make this a priority. And when they're listing different minorities and different groups who are disenfranchised, you need to make sure that they're also talking about the disability community and including the disability community in what they're talking about. And that's all your lawmakers. That also includes your schools, education, pretty much anything.
Great. Thank you so much, Judy. I really want to make sure that our residents know about the amazing resource that we have in the Richfield Disability Advocacy Partnership that you and your daughter Raven co-founded a few years ago. And can you tell us a little bit more about RDAP, the work that you do here in Richfield, and how people can participate and support your organization?
Absolutely. So we started RDAP, Richfield Disability Advocacy Partnership, 2 years ago, actually 2 years ago this month. And Mayor helped us start that group actually and encouraged us to continue on with that. And we have grown over the last couple of years. We meet once a month. Currently, we are meeting virtually, which is very unfortunate because only 60% of people with disabilities have the internet. And even those who have the internet don't necessarily know how to use the internet, or especially with Zoom, we all know how that is difficult. And also seniors, only 70% of seniors have the internet. And so this period of COVID where we cannot do things in person has been extremely difficult for people with disabilities and seniors, more so than the rest of us. So we hope to be able to meet in person soon, but given the fact that people with disabilities are at high risk during COVID, we want to make really sure that things are safe and be overly cautious because we don't want to put anyone at risk. So we are continuing to have meetings every month, and I think there'll be information about that. And we already have, we just got a new website, so there is information out there, and we have a Facebook as well, and that's Richfield Disability Advocacy Partnership. Some of the things we work on, the main two things are education and advocacy. And we didn't really choose the focus ahead of time. we just kind of let things open, kept things open, and went with where the most need was. And that's what happened, was around education and policy, advocating for different policies. And really, without the education, you're never going to make it to people making changes. And so those are the main two things we focused on. But really, we focus on whatever comes up in the disability community in Richfield. And that may be someone with disabilities who their social worker with the county is not showing up and they're not getting the services they need. It could be anything. And if they don't have access to the food shelf, these are not things that are on our list of things we do, but we do them anyways because we care about our community and we really see ourselves as more of a family. And that's the most unique thing about RDAP, is that we are specific to Richfield. I don't know of another city, and I'm sure I could be wrong because there's a whole lot of cities in Minnesota. But in the Twin Cities especially, I have not heard of a group that is specific to the city. We have been encouraged to grow outside of the city, and we have resisted that because we believe it is extremely important to stay on the local level. There are many organizations working on the state level or that cover the entire Twin Cities. But we feel like we need to stay focused and that we can have a bigger impact if we build relationships within our city, with our lawmakers, with our business owners, and the disability community itself. And so we are unique because of that. The other reason we are unique is that most disability organizations are run by able-bodied people. And they all want to be inclusive, but they struggle with that. And just guessing, I would say that our members are probably 80 or more % self-advocates. So we're all people with disabilities who run RDAP, who lead in RDAP and in the community. And so I didn't even think about it in the beginning, but that has really shown to be something that people really notice about us, is that we're doing it for ourselves and aren't asking other people to run things for us. And so we may be a little bit unconventional, but we're okay with that because it represents who we are. Some of our accomplishments, there's too many to list, but one of them is that we were able to get the Richfield City's Comprehensive Plan 2040 amended to include the disability community as a demographic. And also our master pedestrian plan that was also in 2018, both of those. And we've just kind of continued down that path. We try to stay alert at what's going on in the community. We've also done mediation with small businesses between people with disabilities here in Richfield and small business owners who do not really understand the laws of the ADA and understand how to be compliant and welcoming to the disability community, even though they want to be, but there's just a lack of education. But so I could go on indefinitely about the work we do, but I think that's kind of the core of everything.
Thank you so much, Judy. I will just personally say I've been really inspired by the leadership that RDAP has grown over time. I have seen community members grow, step into their leadership through the support of RDAP, and we're very lucky to have RDAP in our community, and I really look forward to continuing to work together, and I hope more of our residents can get involved. So please get connected with Judy and RDAP, and thank you so much for being here with me today.
Well, thank you for having me.